We'll call the meeting to order at this time, and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We appreciate the turnout this evening. Thank you for coming this evening. I would like to state that now we're recording all of these meetings, so please state your name and when giving a comment, and use the microphone at the front. I would appreciate that. Thank you. So roll call. We'll start with Rick.
Present. Can you hear me? Present.
You're
Jenny
mic'd
Street.
out up there.
Present.
Patrick Steyer, present.
Walt Wiley, present, obviously. I need a motion for the approval of the September 18th, 2024 agenda.
I will make a motion to approve the agenda.
I will second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can you hear us back there? Okay, so the reason why we're doing this is because we're being taped. So the audio should be taped. So I'm going to ask Patrick to please use the mic when we do our information.
Test.
Thank you.
Is it working?
And I'm not going to pick on you right now. So
Okay.
Thank you. I also need an approval of the August 21st, 2024 minutes, or a motion.
I make a motion to approve the August 21st minutes.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll now go to our public safety reports. Item number 5, from Public Safety, CAL FIRE, CHP, and Placer County Sheriff. Not necessarily in that order, but in urgency. So do we have I did see the fire department here. I haven't seen anyone else. If you'd like to, I'm looking, but
Sure. Good evening. My name is Brian Mackwood, the Assistant Chief here for Placer County Fire, also representing CAL FIRE, where I kind of wear two hats. But for our update, at least on the state side, obviously we are in a significant uptick with our wildland fires that were going on in the north and the south. I just got back from Fresno County on a large incident down there. While I was down there, we had additional incidents that were happening. You saw probably on the news 3 major fires that were going on. What I can tell you is all those are looking much, much better at this point. We've sent quite a few resources here locally down to the Southern California units, and they're kind of wrapping up right now, and I just got some texts where majority of them are coming home now. So everything's looking much better. Yeah, weather's looking a little bit tamer, but please understand we got a good heat wave coming in again next week, so we're not done quite yet. End of report.
thank you. I see the sheriff's department now. You were hiding back there.
Hi, I'm Deputy Rosenfeld. These are our stats for this portion of the county since August 1st to the end of August. Nothing crazy to report other than just the normal incidents and related activity calls.
Thank you. Any questions? Appreciate your service out here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The response time is, for the most part, and I live way out there, very good.
Glad to hear that. Thank you.
I was hoping for the Highway Patrol to be here for a report in regard to the incident that happened last year, but I don't see them here at this time. So I guess Bonnie's going to be a representative for the Highway Patrol. Thank you.
I'm not, except we figured out how to turn on. So I'm giving you the update that we just heard that there was a CHP officer up in Auburn who had an accident, a motorcycle officer had an accident up in Auburn this afternoon. Thus, probably the reason somebody from CHP is not here tonight. So we'll try to reschedule that, Walt.
We'd appreciate that. Thank you, and we hope the officer's doing well. We'll open now for item number 6, public comment. One of the issues this evening is that we have the development process coming up, the community plan, transportation element, and the future of fire service in the Dry Creek. So I would ask that you keep your questions outside of those topics, and then we can move on from there. We appreciate your flexibility on this, and the podium is yours.
Talking to this? Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Anyway, John Fensky, I'm a Dry Creek resident. I live about 600, 700 yards right that way, downwind from the Double S development. Here's a picture of my solar panels in August. There's my solar panels in August. Every May, every spring, I clean my solar panels, and that's usually good for the year. And what happened was all the dust from the construction at Double S blew, because I'm downwind, blew and basically made my panels like this. So my brother-in-law and I had to take our long squeegees, ladders, and sprayers and everything else. It took 3 hours to clean this off to get back to where we normally are. After I did this, our solar generation went up about 10 to 15%. So I don't know what to do about this, because this is not my fault. This is not normal. I've lived here for years, and this is not normal. So I feel it's a $300 work I put in, frankly, and I know if I ask the county for reimbursement, I'll have to do a bunch of paperwork and go through a lot of hassle, and maybe $200 worth of hassle, and maybe get reimbursed, because all they have is a picture and a couple generation figures or something like that. So what I'd like you to consider is maybe putting up a fund for this development and future developments, so when people have to have costs to themselves, I mean, I wouldn't even go into like deers coming on my property and destroying my orchard, but that never happened before either, but that's just development. But put up some kind of fund or something like that, so it would be easy. We could come to a MAC meeting and maybe reasonably get reimbursed for the problems we've had to face. Thank you.
Within the contract that is made by the petitioner and the developer, there is a thing called best management practices, BMPs, and within the BMTs there is a dust control that's necessary, and the individual to talk to in regard to that, it's not like a conversation back and forth, this is the direction to go, is the best management practices. So what you do is you contact the engineer or the inspector that's on that project that's representing Placer County, which they may be a consultant, and then you file your complaint with them, and they should do the follow-up to let you know what to do. So it shouldn't be $200 worth of work, but I understand what you're saying, and I did mention that in the beginning, that the dirt on the highway, the tracking of the mud, all of those things that influence the Clean Water Act, etc., are within that compass. It's compassed in that. So best management practices, get a hold of the inspector for this, which will be readily given to you, and then actually if you go to Supervisor Gore's office, they can give you the contact for that.
I know we don't have a conversation, so, but also all along the video you can see the solar panels too.
I'm not suggesting that you were an isolated incident. I'm just suggesting this is the best way to go about it. They will respond back.
I'm Dean Shanklin, Dry Creek resident. Some of my thunder was stolen right there with what you had replied with, Walt. I wanted to also talk about right there at Vineyard and Cucuriolo, where they had dug all those big trenches. I saw where they had just painted on there, "Fix this," in the middle of a ditch. When I drive across it with my four-wheel drive truck, I'm actually almost four-wheeling. You know, I'm bouncing all over the place. It's not so bad in my wife's Lexus, but in my truck, it's ridiculous how much it's sunk down, and they did not do a good enough job to pack it down. And it's pretty much the whole Double S Ranch project where they tapped into our Cucuriolo Street and Vineyard Street that needs to be fixed. And I'll contact Bonnie Gore's office and get that same information for that, I would imagine. Also on Brady Lane, that new development out there, I sat there and watched them with that big pile of tires that sat there forever. And then all of a sudden, the next day I came back, after months and months and months, and all of a sudden there was a pile of dirt over the top of them where they just buried the tires into the project. So I'm going to talk to Bonnie's office about that as well. And the massive amounts of dirt that they are not taking care of on the side of the road as it's coming out. It goes all the way to baseline and all the way to the church. I have never seen in all my travels down that road anybody out there cleaning the road. They might be. I just don't see it. Sure doesn't. If they are, they're not doing a good job. So I'll contact about that. But the main reason I came up here was because I wanted to talk about today when I was driving past Antelope, North Antelope and PFE, where the new project is being built. What is that, the ranch out there? No. What's it called? Creekview Ranch, Creekview. Anyway, it made my wife cry. And some of the residents that are out here expressed the same thing on how horrible to see probably the best looking piece of land in our whole community that's now being decimated by tractors and things being just torn up. And it's more just a comment of expressing how sad if we allow these projects to continue what it does to our aesthetics and our visual and just everything. It's horrible. So anyway, thank you.
Hello, my name is Alba Vieira Benito. My husband and I have lived in the Fidgeman development in West Roseville since December 2021. We have some comments that we believe are relevant to this meeting. We fully support the residents of Dry Creek in their concerns about traffic, air pollution, a declining quality of life, and the environmental impacts on wildlife and natural habitats. We understand that authorities have been neglecting to address these concerns in our area, and we want to ensure that Dry Creek doesn't suffer the same fate. Additionally, when we move into our new home, we are disappointed that the developer didn't use California native plants in the landscaping. The standard palette of non-native plants made our yard unattractive and provided no habitat for beneficial insects and birds. To address this, my husband and I used our own funds to re-landscape our yard, replacing the non-native plants with California native species. These plants were chosen for their beauty and ability to support wildlife. After about 2 years, our soil is healthier, and we have observed a resurgence of bees, dragonflies, lizards, earthworms, frogs, rabbits, birds, and monarch butterflies in our backyard. This is a relief, as our neighborhood has the lowest canopy coverage in Roseville. We are pleased with the transformation of our yard and the opportunity for our children to learn about coexisting with nature. Please, when designing and building new developments in West Placer, avoid the mistake our developer made by using non-native plants in landscaping. Instead, require the developers to use native plants that will help preserve the natural beauty of Placer County. The people who purchase these new homes and the broader community deserve the peace of mind that comes from knowing they are contributing to wildlife habitat preservation. Thank you. I have some photos of our backyard, how it was and how it is now. Is there anyone that I could give? Okay. Thank you.
copies for you all. Oh, Chris, here we go. There you go. Give one to you too. All right, here you go. Let me get my notes. Hi, I'm Laura Bullard, and you've seen me a lot of times since February. I think I've been living a nightmare since February when we had to deal with the whole low-income rezoning crud that went on. And what I'm going to tell you is I don't think I should have to work this freaking hard to be able to save my community, okay? And when I taught my students or whatever, I said, it's okay, guys, there are things like zoning and everything that rule these things. Well, then I found out that apparently they just ignore those. However, what I also found out in this process is that we have this thing called a community plan. I hope do you guys all have the community plan? Do you have copies of it? Okay, if not, I'll make copies for you with all my notes on it. It's good, okay? It's only about 177 pages. I've actually just about the first 60 pages made a quick summary of some of what I consider the important points or whatever there. However, and I am sure, Chris, that you have a copy of our community plan. Do you have it? Do you have it like memorized? Okay, okay, oh, dang it. Wait, hold on. I got an extra copy for you too, okay? There you go. Now, the deal is, guys, number one, there is a community plan that is supposed to rule land use and is supposed to rule traffic, okay, issues. Okay, and the reality is that you guys become the first line of defense, and that's why I'm giving that to you, because this plan was developed by community members to help to look at the development of this area for 40 to 50 years, okay? And the reality is we need to follow that. There was a lot of stuff put in there about things like using native plants, not cutting down the native trees and everything, and there's some very useful and important things in there that are gonna, rule for our community. The other thing that I found out at our last meeting was, I said, what happened to zoning? And what I was told was, the only way that zoning can be changed is through administrative action, okay, or administrative entitlements. That's only the Board of Supervisors, in which case you become our first line of defense. And you have to be able to stand up, Bonnie, to actually make sure that you are representing our community, okay? So that's critical that happen, okay? Only the Board of Supervisors can actually change that. What I'm going to tell you is that when we talk about administrative entitlements, they are not entitled to screw our community. Okay, you know what? If people want to make some bucks because they inherited some land or whatever, far out, okay? But the reality is that doesn't say that in the process of that you don't follow our community plan and make it so that, yeah, you can make some money, but don't screw the rest of us in the process of it. So what I'm saying is we need to come back and follow our community plan. Thank you.
Rick Reedman, Dry Creek. John, I'm going to give you a break tonight. I've beat the ranch to death. So I'm going to talk about the new Estia Dry Creek development that was proposed. They brought us to the last MAC. And it kind of caught me off guard for a company to stand up there and talk about how all this philanthropy that their company does, and it's nonprofit and it all goes to good causes and this and that. But they want to build 400 plus housing units up here, and they don't want a single one of them to be affordable. So we're going to end up back fighting, like Laura was talking about, for get more affordable housing built somewhere. I mean, they said the apartment complex was exempt, but that doesn't mean they couldn't subsidize some of the apartments and make them affordable, that they couldn't build some ADUs. They want to give you 4 acres at Dry Creek, at PFE and Watt Avenue that's probably worth $200,000 instead of building, a couple $1 million worth of houses. So it doesn't make sense to me, and I hope that we have enough common sense not to approve a development like that. Thank you.
My
My name is Jessica Haynes. I was going to talk about the community plan also, Laura. The first sentence, well, and the general plan. The first sentence on the first page of the introduction to the Placer County Community Plan says that the general plan is a legal document required by state law that serves as a community's constitution for land use and development. On page 2, it goes on to say that the unincorporated territory covered by a community plan, like Dry Creek, is subject to the specifications of land use circulation plan diagrams contained in the applicable community plan. As such, why is our community plan being blatantly disregarded in terms of land use and circulation, one spot rezone at a time? Why is every concession, these are like questions I literally want answered by somebody, I don't know who. Why is every concession our community makes to try to come towards a compromise with developers pushed in our faces later on as a new justification for veering even further away from our plan? Is it the will of the county to remove opportunities of its citizens to participate in setting goals and determining policies and standards for the community's development? Can someone just come out and say why the community plan, and by extension the general plan, this constitution, this legal document, is being thrown out of the window? The only thing anyone can ever tell me is landowners have rights. I think we are all well aware of that, but the question is, do landowners have rights to automatically be granted legislative entitlements for rezoning any way they see fit, despite the harmful impacts to the community? Is it the goal of the county to turn Dry Creek into a sea of houses with no distinction between Sac County and Placer, with zero buffer? Is it the goal of the county to reduce lifestyle choice of its residents and eliminate agricultural and small family farm opportunities for those in the Roseville area? We all know this area has been slated for potential future growth, and our community plan speaks to that growth and how it should be implemented. High-density rezoning was never part of that plan in many, many areas of Dry Creek. Yet here we are with high-density rezoning in those very areas. No answers, and a leadership that seems set on keeping us in the dark as they knowingly make decisions against the will of their constituents. And I only say that because looking at the agenda tonight, which I'm very happy, it's a great agenda, Landon. I just say that because this seems like the meeting that we should have been having like 5 years ago. Anyway, thank you.
Hi. Okay. This one or this one? This one. Okay. Hi. My name's Lisa Mendenhall. I'm a 20-year resident here in Dry Creek, original owner at Sun Valley Oaks, and I've lived in Roseville since 1998. Our first house was over by Wood Creek Golf Course, and when we started looking to purchase a home, all the new development out towards Blue Oaks and everything, I could reach out and touch my neighbor. We weren't interested in that. We came to Sun Valley Oaks because we had half-acre lots. We were part of the Dry Creek community. It was rural. We loved the look and feel of it. And we knew that development was imminent. I mean, there was going to be a grammar school supposedly right down the street from us. That never happened. Dry Creek never built it. But what I am concerned about is this SDA development along with all the other ones that we're fighting here, because to put the best interest of that developer at the forefront by our supervisor and by our county and Dry Creek, that's not in our best interest as homeowners here in the Dry Creek Community Plan. And so all their plans to build however many houses and apartment buildings and everything, again, like Jessica said and Laura said, it's not part of the community plan. And I would just ask that you guys honor that and do whatever is in our power or your power as our representatives to protect our best interests here in Dry Creek. Thank you.
Hi, Laura Trout, and same old, 70 years, been here since dirt. I would like to focus on something I spoke to Landon about just before he went on vacation. And I don't even think I brought it up during the meeting. I think I just did it in passing afterwards, so I will apologize for that, and I'm going to follow up now. And then I'm going to follow up next week with your office, Supervisor Gore. The issue I'd like to talk about is schools. We kind of broached it very lightly last time, but I would like to understand there's 1,500 doors going into our very immediate area here. That's estimated to be about 1,800 children. It's 1.125, I think it is, kids per bedroom, understanding some of them are parents, some of them are offices, but it's 1.125 per bedroom is the builder standard average. At least it was when I worked in the legislature. I'd like to understand where those kids are going to go. I would like to get a report of the schools we currently have in our immediate area, or however far you want to draw the map. I'd like to understand the capacity of those schools, as well as the grade range. It's been a long time since I've had a child in school. I'd like to understand where the children that are going to be coming and moving into those homes are going to be expected to go to school. If they're going to be walking to school, that would be ideal. I think most parents would like to think they have a neighborhood school. We thought we were going to have neighborhood schools here, and as you're hearing, they just keep getting unbuilt project by project. So I'm not sure how you can build schools. And I know we're fighting over roads, and I'm always fighting over infrastructure and fire and life safety, but I think we've got to think about our kids getting an education as well. So I'd like to find out the capacity of the schools, and then what it's going to bring to where those kids are going to go to school, and how far they're going to have to go, if they're going to be bused, if the new parents are going to have to be taking them, you know, transporting in themselves, and how that's going to be handled. The next thing I would like to find a way to address, and I believe the county board is addressing it based on our meetings with them in March or April, the impact fees and how those are going to be revised. I think I heard somewhere it's going to be a $100,000 study, and it's a couple of years down the road. Is there a way we can find out what are the impact fees that are being paid currently on the developments that are being made? And I had a brief conversation with someone last week after the meeting where we talked about, well, during the meeting you talked about paying $20,000 worth of school fees and, you know, for a development. And I pointed out afterwards that I just paid $2,000 to put a new house on, or rebuild a new house on our property. So if you're paying $2,000 per door, that'd be great, but I don't think that's where it's coming from. So I'd like to understand impact fees as well as avoidance fees or variance fees or whatever other fees are coming, and how those fees are going to be spent, if they're coming back to us at all, for that kind of input. Thank you.
Any more public comments at this time?
Hi, my name is Jen Leslie, and I'm over here on Glacier Lane. I'm back up to the Creekview project, and let me tell you what they did to us. You know, David Cook came out, bless his heart, and he said nice things, you know, about this great development they're going to put in. And, you know, I don't even have words for this. They've come out a couple weeks ago and they started doing all of the grading. And basically now we used to have a meadow with actual sunrises. They've put in a 10-foot tall wall of dirt right next to our house, and we'll never see another sunrise from our house again. And they're going to put 2-story homes on top of it that are going to be looking down on us. So basically 3 stories, because you're going to have 2 stories on top of the 10-foot wall of dirt that they put up there. And they're going to have 10 houses along our property looking down on our, and this is a rural interface. This is acreage. You know, this was a rural piece of land next to a farm, and we're going to have all of these 30-foot tall, 3-story homes looking down on us. And I sent Dave, bless his heart, an email, and I said, what the hell? And he said, well, you should have studied the grading permit. So thank you. You know, and I blame the county for this. They should not have allowed it. You know what? They could have made money. They could have made money. They could have put single-story homes. They could have pushed them back further so it didn't have the kind of impacts on us. You know, but they basically said, screw you guys, homeowners. We're just going to do what we want and put 10-foot tall and houses on top of it, and we don't care what the impact is. So all these other properties that are being developed around here, don't take their word for it when they say, oh, it's going to be beautiful, you're going to love it. Because they'll do these things and they'll say, well, you better study the grading permit before you complain. Thank you. And I have some great photos if anybody wants to see just what they've done.
Don't know what to do. This one? Is this the one? I'll use this one. Hey everyone, my name is Ryan Haynes, and I'm a resident here in Placer County. So in doing all the research to try to figure out what's taken place to get us to this point, I've made a lot of phone calls early on, especially in regards to, well, the property we couldn't save, Creekview Ranch, which is where the lady's property backs right up to, and specifically now the ranch, which is the last large section of property we have available. And so in looking at the overlay map of Placer County, you can see that every different area is labeled in terms of whether it's an area set aside for future protection or planned future growth. And so I just have some questions, and I'm glad Chris is here tonight. Maybe he can shed some light on it. But the PCCP was set up in 2020, and the Board of Supervisors set up the Placer County Conservation Program. And in doing so, the county as a whole, especially in Lincoln and the unincorporated areas, were looked at and categorized in terms of what they wanted to do with it in the future. I think the PCCP miscategorized and misrepresented the Dry Creek corridor because of several things, especially our proximity to a major waterway, which is one of the things that they're supposed to be protecting, the riparian habitat that runs through, the oaklands and the woodlands. We see now that all this construction is happening. There's tons of displaced animals that live in those areas. There's deer getting hit down here on the bridge. There's coyotes walking down PFE in the middle of the day. There's tons of skunks running around, natural creatures. But that area, when I called Placer Legacy and I called the PCCP, they said, well, you guys are on an island and there's nothing we can do to save it. But that island was created by the overlay that PCC put on our area that has allowed all these developments, including Creekview Ranch, soon to be the Mill Creek, all the developments coming around. And for some reason, they took a giant roller over our beautiful rural community when they should have been painting with a fine brush to identify which areas were worth conserving for open space. Because some of the county priorities here, even the Placer Legacy program, is to maintain agriculture as a viable part of the economy, to protect and expand outdoor recreation areas, to protect areas that are scenic or historically significant, to establish open space buffers between communities. And I would argue that the community plan, our community plan, as you all know, in its intention to create a buffer between Antelope and Roseville, has been totally rolled over by all this development. But the key elements of the Placer Legacy programs, in addition, are to provide a wide variety of ownership, preservation, and funding methods to address the diverse circumstances, to benefit the county's economic future by clearly maintaining the county as an outstanding place to live and do business. And for all of us here, we don't feel like our area is going to be maintained as a very outstanding place to live for very much longer. And then to maintain local land use control by taking a leadership role in the preservation of endangered species and habitats. To identify open spaces of importance to residents, which I think we're all trying to make very clear, we're identifying this place as that place. Identify open spaces of importance to residents of the cities as well as the unincorporated area. Improve the certainty in the regulatory process, design the program to allow phasing. So the PCCP basically, what it ended up being is just a deal made with developers to where you can have a set fee of mitigation for a vernal pool, a set of oaks, or whatever else. They have to pay the money, they get to play and build what they want to, and it's not really serving our communities very well. So if we could go back and look at that in any way, shape, or form, I would love that.
Hi, my name is Debbie Bell. I'm here with another member of the original MAC, the first MAC that was granted to our community after a massive grassroots effort to try to work with the county and put a plan together for our community. A number of years back, I stepped aside in particular and have managed to stay completely out of this until this rezone effort came up. I'm here primarily tonight because of the transportation issues. However, listening to all these people, there's a few things I'd like you to know. First of all, I'm disgusted that the county has so blatantly disregarded our community. We worked for years on that plan, all day, every day. And for you to just toss it aside and not care what happens to us is disgusting. The primary element of the plan, our intention, was to preserve the rural nature of this community while absorbing some growth. Through the rezone effort and some people that put together the new effort to bring together this community, which I am extremely proud to see happening, I became aware that the work we did to try to take in some density, some moderate density, and try to get rural, semi-rural communities into our community, developments into our community, where we could all coexist and see if this could even happen. And you know what? It worked. Everyone I've talked to that's moved into Morgan Creek, Morgan Greens, any of the surrounding developments, they think they live in a rural community. That's an accomplishment. When I drive down my road and I see a brick wall that's not supposed to be there, my blood pressure goes through the roof. Stop it. You can honor our plan. We worked so hard for it. We don't deserve to everybody just slap us aside. We did something. This is a unique community. We did something, we accomplished something, all of us together, that I can't think of another area that has managed to do it the way this has been done so far. Now our remaining large plots of land are going to be bowled over. I keep warning everybody about a thing called density transfer. Please, don't do that. Don't do that to us. I was driving down PFE yesterday, heading east toward Antelope North, across the street from the Warner's place just before Morgan Creek. This lone young coyote, and I'm no fan of a coyote, but they come, this little critter's just trotting down the road trying to get away from all the development because he's been displaced. Who knows where his family is? All of these things. We have an eagle in this community. Find it. In all my paperwork, and let me tell you, I've got a lot of paperwork. I've got all kinds of paperwork. I've got paperwork other community members that weren't in the forefront have brought to me to hold on to for the years. So if anybody wants to see that, I've got it. I got a lot of it. Something that came forward in the early part of our plan when the environmental impact report was done. There was a document that was sent to us by, and I'm probably get the name of the department wrong now, it was either Fish and Wildlife, Fish and Game, something along that nature. And as Ryan was just saying a minute ago, in that document, that letter, they stated what a unique situation we have here, what a unique community we are, that we can offer a great buffer between densities, high density, between Sacramento County and City of Roseville. What a unique situation we are. Why don't we take advantage of that? Why are we now just throwing it all out the window? Can't you at least make the developers hold to some of that plan? Use landscape berms instead of walls. Use native plants. Don't allow all this density transfer that's going to increase the density of our subdivision or of our community, and many people don't know what that density transfer is. What that means is, say, a developer has 5 acres in a flood zone. Well, all those homes, they don't get to build in that flood zone because it's a flood zone, which we fought tooth and nail to keep Morgan Creek out of. They transfer into the rest of the project, makes it more dense. But you don't have to do that. Where does it say that if infrastructure and other things are not available to support growth, that you have to do it anyway? Once in my entire life have I ever seen a moratorium on building. I know that's not going to happen in the state of California. It's in Colorado Springs in the 70s. Colorado Springs said, we can't support this. We can't do it, so you can't build. End of story. It's all about the mighty buck. This community has been fighting for years, years and years and years, to try to make it work and preserve our lifestyle for those that want to stay. And people have loved moving in here because of it. It works. So let's see if we can do something to kind of stick with the plan a little bit and not just throw it right down the tubes.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tammy Reedman. I'm just going to add a little bit to her coyote story. We've had 2 dead deer on Vineyard because of that nasty ass road that you want to put more people on. Very, 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 very dangerous. Not only do you want to put people, but you want to put kids on there. Deer are dying, coyotes are dying. I have a fox in my yard now and turkey in my yard because they're all getting scared over there. So you're putting more people in our little area and the wildlife is going crazy. This is not that's a dangerous road. Please, no more people.
Do we have any more public comments? I do appreciate them. I would like a copy of that letter from Fish and Game or Fish and Wildlife if you have it. Please dig that up. That would be viable. Hopefully some of the questions that were asked this evening will be answered in item 7 for the informational items. We'll now go to the Community Development Resource Panel. The development process timeline, Chris is presenting that, the planning director.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Chris Bahuli, Planning Director for Placer County. Appreciated all the comments. I'm sure we'll hear more as we go through the presentation and hear from both the MAC and from public comments. I'm sorry. Mr.
One comment before we open up. If we could allow them to get through their statements in regard to this, and then we can ask questions at the end of this 3-panel community information. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that. I've been asked to come out and give an update as to where we're at with current development projects in the Dry Creek area. And so happy to be here. It's been a few months since I've last been with this community out at this meeting. I'm going to go through a couple of slides to first set some context for how development projects work through the process, and then talk about and show some maps that were part of the presentation and handout, and give an update on current development projects before we move into discussion about transportation and transportation improvements in the area. So the first thing that I wanted to start with to provide some context is just how does the entitlement process, how does the land development process in Placer County work? And I know that this might be a little bit difficult to see, but I'll kind of walk through this just to, again, give some context. I think this is a great illustration to walk through. So I'm going to see if this works here. It does, kind of. So we over here at the very left corner here. Yes?
Are there no copies of that handout? There were some on the counter. There are none. No.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I apologize for that, but I'll walk through it here for folks. But on that very left-hand side, we have in the county what's called a pre-development meeting. And what that means is that the county actually has a codified requirement in our municipal code that all projects that are of a certain size are required to go through a pre-development process with the county. That means that they come in, they tell us what they're planning to do, they get comments from the county about what the submittal requirements are, whether the project would be consistent with the general plan, with the community plans, with the zoning ordinance. They get a first look or first set of comments from the county about what that submittal will look like, what they will need to apply for, and how that process will go through. Importantly, they have 1 year from the time of that pre-development to actually submit a formal application to the county. If they don't hit that 1 year mark, they're required to go back through that pre-development process. And that's important when I go through the maps, because when I do that, I'll indicate there's some projects that are in that pre-development stage. There's some that are in with a filed application, and there's others that have been approved. Following the pre-development, once they get to a submitted application, that submitted application is at this point here. And I wanted to point out during that process, when we receive a filed, or when we receive a submitted application, the county staff goes through a process of evaluating whether that's a complete application. They're also required to submit, for most large projects, an environmental questionnaire, which kicks off the environmental review process. Important for you all to know, and for the MAC to know, I know it's come up recently, I think it came up with the Estia project at your last meeting. This is a stage where signs are posted on properties, and it's also when county staff require that, applicants come out and make informational presentations to the MACs. And that's a very important point in this process. During that filed, once the application is submitted to the county, then that evaluation, as I mentioned, is occurring, and there's a submittal that, or a distribution rather, that happens to all of the other county departments as well as other agencies. I know there were comments about the schools and other utility providers that aren't part of the county. That distribution happens at that point, and we are working on getting comments and requests from those county agencies, county departments, as well as outside agencies as well during that part of the process. From there, then we begin, once we have a complete application, and we're working on getting all the technical studies from the applicant in response to the departments and agencies, we're working on preparing that environmental document and getting all of that information. And that can take a fair amount of time, in terms of preparation of an environmental impact report or preparation of a mitigated negative declaration. We're talking about, many times a year, upwards of over a year to put all of that information together. So again, could take quite a bit of time depending on the project, depending on the applicant. At the point where the environmental document is complete, then we get to a point where the project is nearing its point where it will be taken to hearing, taken to the either the zoning administrator. Most cases, these larger projects are coming to the Planning Commission, and then will ultimately be heard by the Board of Supervisors, because they contain what was talked about a little bit earlier, a legislative action. Anytime there's a rezone or a community plan amendment, general plan amendment, that's a legislative action that must be heard before the Board of Supervisors, first with receiving a recommendation from the Planning Commission. And prior to those projects going to hearing, that's when you will see these projects come back to the MAC, for a formal recommendation that will then be provided to the Planning Commission. And again, that summary of the Planning Commission, or of the MAC's recommendation, will also carry forward to the Board of Supervisors when it gets to that point. And then we go through public hearings, obviously, Planning Commission, Board of Supervisors, and then once all of that is done, then if the project is approved, then it moves forward to improvement plans, construction level documents, finaling subdivision maps, those implementing efforts before you start seeing grading on the site or construction, vertical construction on the site. In terms of how long this process currently takes, depending on the project, again, if it's a tentative subdivision map in a specific plan area, we have a number of those that are occurring right now. I'll speak to some of those as I go through the presentation. Those could take about a year from the time that the application is submitted to the time that it goes to hearing. For projects where there are legislative actions that are requested, those could take upwards of 2 years. So just so we're all kind of on the same or have some context as to process as we start talking about some of the projects. So going to move on here again. The slides look big when we're looking at them on our PowerPoint. They look fairly large on the screens, but I know some of them might be hard to see, so I might kind of highlight sites, slide or portions of the slide. But this slide here provides some broader context. So I want to go over this. This is the city of Roseville here. This is the regional university specific plan, which will contain ultimately a couple thousand homes or a few thousand homes, as well as this slide and a university. And then this slide also contains the Country Acres project, that solar project that was recently approved, the SMUD project. But just south then we have the Dry Creek community plan area here. This is baseline. We have the Placer Vineyards specific plan with planned for over 14,000 homes. We also have the Riolo Vineyard specific plan, nearly 1,000 homes, and then we have the remainder of the Dry Creek community plan area. And so what I'm going to do is walk through, we've broken up the Dry Creek area into a few different components, kind of working west to east, and provide an update on the projects that are currently occurring in these areas. So I'm going to start first to the far west, which is where there's the least amount of actual physical activity occurring. This area contains,
Chris?
I'm sorry?
Is this all District 1 that you're referring to? Is the solar farm District 1, or is it in a different?
That includes District 2. Yeah. But I'm not gonna speak about those. Yep. So again, gonna start on the west portion. This includes a number of subdivisions that have actually been approved as part of a first phase of development in the Placer Vineyards specific plan area. Back in 2017, that first phase of the project was approved. It included 7 properties. Most of those properties are in this more western area. This area, the first phase contains about 5,000 homes that have been approved through tentative subdivision maps. And this area here on the western portion contains about 3,500 lots. So again, not much in terms of actual development activity occurring in this area, but there are a number of properties that have been, number of the properties that have been approved through tentative map. I'll also mention that we are having conversations with applicants or property owners coming in with future projects. This property 19. Sorry, here, this larger one here. They may be submitting in the near future for the remainder of this property, so that might be an application that you see very shortly, as well as down here, properties 9 and 11. They have submitted a pre-development. Oops, I'm sorry. They submitted for a pre-development, and likely an application will be forthcoming for that site as well. Correct. So next, going to move to the area in sort of the central portion of the community plan area. This is sort of that Watt to Willerga area, and this is actually where we probably find the most amount of current activity occurring. So I'm going to first kind of finish off the Placer Vineyards area, first by highlighting Lennar's Heritage Project here that's been under construction for a while now. It's about a little over 50%, a little under 50% constructed, but home sales are occurring there. I'd also like to point out, because I know we've had multiple conversations in this community about affordable housing, that this project does have a 168-unit affordable multifamily housing development that Lennar is required through their development agreement to build by 75% occupancy of their project. The design review was just recently approved for that affordable housing project. It's with St. Anton is the affordable housing developer for that project. So I wanted to point that out for folks. Moving south is the Property 2 development here, 404 lots. That also includes a 40-unit affordable housing development. So there's actually 444 units as part of that development. That was recently approved by the Board of Supervisors, went in August, so just a month ago or so for approval. Let's see, that project is with Woodside Homes. A couple of other items to note in this in Placer Vineyards, we do have a application that's in process for property 1B. That's with Ponderosa Homes here in yellow. That property is working through its approval process and will likely be moving towards coming to the MAC and then moving to hearing early 2025. Moving south from here is the Riolo Vineyards specific plan area. Wanted to highlight a few things here. First, we have the Mason Trails and Glen Willow development. This is largely being built out currently. Moving west from there, we have the Silver Sage and Frisvold subdivisions. Those projects have been approved. That's why they're highlighted in green. They're in for improvement plan review. However, no builder has been identified for those subdivisions. I'd also like to point out again, when I was talking about our development process before, I mentioned pre-developments. We do have a couple of pre-developments that are in this general area. So just south of the specific plan, south of PFE Road, we have this PFE Meadows pre-development that was just submitted, so sort of hot off the presses, all right? That is a 61-unit, 61-lot subdivision that was just submitted for pre-development. It's about 10 acres or so, and so we'll be going through the process of meeting with that potential applicant, going through what the requirements are. But at this point, in order to carry out the project that they have submitted, it would require a community plan amendment, would require a tentative subdivision map. So again, wanted to mention that submittal of that pre-development. I also wanted to point out, and I think we've talked about this maybe before at other meetings, but we did have a pre-development for this site here at Willerga and PFE on that northwest corner. That property is currently zoned commercial. The potential applicant is interested in doing a multifamily development there, townhomes and apartments. And so that is a pre-development. Again, as I said earlier, they have a year to submit that pre-development. If not, they would need to resubmit and go back through that process. So I'm going to move now to the area in the most eastern part of the community plan area. And the first thing that I wanted to highlight was that there is an error with this map, and that I wanted to call attention to. So up at the very top corner here, this is that Kuhan Estates property. It's where the strawberry patch is. That property, it indicates that there is a pre-development on that property. That pre-development actually came in 2022. And so as I mentioned earlier, after 1 year, it expires. They would need to come back in. So that's actually an expired pre-development application. We do not currently have any filed applications on that property. So I'm going to kind of focus on a couple of projects here. As you can see, we have a number of projects that are under construction. You all obviously know those projects that are under construction. I probably don't need to spend much time on those, but we, is just north of here, we got Double S Ranch, which was talked about earlier. We have Creekview down in this area. So I'm not going to spend time on those, but I will spend time on the ones that are either in a pre-development. Actually, I don't see any here that are in pre-development, but ones that are in process or approved but have not yet gone to construction. So the first is the Estia project. I probably won't spend much time on that just because that came to the MAC last meeting. You all know that's the Homes by Town proposal. On the northern portion of the property, it contains multifamily, kind of relatively low density multifamily development, small apartment units there. Okay, yeah, okay, fair enough. And then, oops, I'm sorry. And then to the south of Willerga there, then it's single family housing in that location. That project, as was mentioned, just came to the MAC as an informational item at their last meeting. So if you remember that slide that I showed earlier about sort of that development process, very early in the process, the application's just been submitted. Signs have just gone up on the property just recently. That MAC informational meeting, but there's a considerable amount of process to go with that project before we get to any recommendation coming from the MAC or any hearings on that project. Next up is the ranch, and so again, I know there's been many meetings on the ranch project. That project is going to be coming to the MAC for a recommendation, I believe, at the next MAC meeting. So that's going to be forthcoming very, very soon. The other two projects that I wanted to mention before I turn over the presentation to Rich Moorhead from our Department of Public Works is Mill Creek, which is just down here to the south. That property has 310 units that are proposed. That project is also fairly early in the process. We're working through the environmental impact report that's being prepared for that project, and working on getting some additional studies that are necessary to complete that EIR. So that project again is a little ways out before it comes back to this group. And then lastly, I did want to highlight the Morgan Crossing project. And so I know a number of you were tracking that project when it was submitted last year and worked through a completeness conflict, if you will, between the county staff and the applicant, ultimately resulting in the Planning Commission making a determination that the application was not complete. And and at that time, the application that application was on the southern portion and the northern portion of that Morgan Creek area. They have since resubmitted for only the southern portion of the property, and that project now contains 48 lots. Again, this one is early. It was just submitted last month, I believe on August 27th. So we're still in that initial review of that application to determine completeness. This project, since it was resubmitted, is resubmitted as just a tentative subdivision map. I believe there's also a use permit modification and a subdivision modification as well. So in terms of this property or this project needing a community plan amendment or a general plan amendment, that's not what was submitted for this one. It's just a tentative map, again, with a modification. That one will be coming once the environmental questionnaire has been submitted, and once we get through this initial review, it will come to the MAC for an informational item. So that will be one that you see fairly soon. It is coming in as an SB 330 project, yes. Yeah, so housing developments that are subject to a fairly recent legislation called SB 330, which limits the number of public meetings that can be had on a project to 5. It also is subject to streamlining provisions as well. So, and a review of the project based on objective standards. So, no subjective guidelines and so forth. It has to be objective standards that it's reviewed against. And all of these residential projects, unless they're seeking a legislative action or some sort of variance that means that it's not consistent with development standards, is subject to SB 330. However, this applicant has actually stated that with their application and filed an SB 330 pre-application to ensure that they have vested rights under SB 330. And so with that, I'm going to hand over my portion of the presentation, but I'm sure I will be back providing responses to questions. So, Rich?
Thank you. Again, Rich Moorhead with the Department of Public Works. And I'm here tonight to talk about the transportation and circulation element of the Dry Creek Community Plan. And before I dive into the specifics of that, I know part of it is how roadway networks are funded, how the improvements get done. So kind of at a higher level, want to talk about that first and then get into the specifics of this plan. So from a big picture standpoint, it happens all over the county, whether it's our general plan, different community plans, specific plans. As they move forward, there's a transportation analysis that's done with that, identify what roadways need to be widened, how they'll operate at different levels of widening, and then we work with the community to identify what's acceptable to them and how do they want their roadway network to look. After that's done, we come up with cost estimates associated with those roadway networks, specific roadways. And then we look at what pieces of land. It's an easy example. Let's say it's a two-lane road that's going to go to a 4. If there's development potential, say on both sides of the road, that doesn't get added into our fee program when we collect our traffic impact fee. That would be frontage. When that developer comes in, they have to construct that lane along their frontage. If there's a development, say there's some development that already occurred, 2 lanes on that, but it needs to go to 4, then we put that in our fee program. And in the end, we add up all the dollar amounts that need to be in that fee program, the amount of development potential that is remaining in the community plan area. We spread that cost over those dwelling units. So when you come in and pay a traffic impact fee, what you're really doing is you're paying your fair share or your mitigation of that cumulative roadway network. That's essentially what that covers. So we collect that as time goes on and implement those projects on that CIP list. The Dry Creek Community Plan, we went and updated or started an update. I thought we did it faster than this, but it was in 2006 it started. That didn't get adopted until 2011. There were 11 MAC meetings associated with that, 2 planning commission hearings and 1 board meeting. We spent about $1 million doing that. So it was a very long process, very involved with the community. So as I go through this, that's what this community wanted that ended up getting adopted into the plan. And part of the plan, as it was being adopted, was to direct traffic away from some of the more localized roadways. So put it on Fitiment, Baseline Road. And just so you know, this is the community plan area, obviously. And the roadways up here that are in color, it doesn't represent roadway widths, it represents classifications. So the orange is a collector road. So if you think about them in this hierarchy, they go from a residential street, you feed out into a collector road. The ones that carry even more volume, like a Willarga Road, is an arterial. Those then ultimately feed to either other arterials, but eventually to highways, and then freeways is kind of the top end of the hierarchical classification of roadways. So as part of the transportation community plan, this is one of the goals, that it's going to operate, your roadways will operate at level of service D, except for, and it has exceptions to different roadways here. So Baseline Road is level of service E. Watt for the segment from Baseline to SAC is F. And there's a diagram, we put this in here just because it's specifically directly out of the community plan, but there's a diagram after this that probably is easier to follow. But the point of this is that, you know, there were decisions made at that time to allow some roadways even to go to level of service F, and this is really during your peak times. And the idea, but the community again, was that would force that traffic to other roadways. There'd be delay on some of these roads, but you wouldn't be adding additional capacity to, say, Vineyards or Cook Riolo to a 4-lane facility to accommodate that through traffic. It would force it back out to like a Willarga. And although Watt operates at a low level of service, it's going to be a 6-lane facility. So again, the roadways, and you can see here, let's see, oops, almost went forward. But that, you know, Baseline Road, the gold color or yellow color is level of service E, and then the red, and we're sitting right in this zone right here, the red is level of service F. And then the circles that are in red there are also allowed to go to level of service F during the peak times. And I know part of the questions are, you know, what does the developer, or what is the developer required to do, and then what does the fee program cover? Yep, went the wrong way. So again, this is probably a little hard to see. Like Chris was saying, when we're sitting at our desk doing this, right, it's all clear as can be, and you can zoom in and all that. And but as an example, and if this comes in, I'm going to use Baseline Road here as the example for a minute. So, you know, Baseline Road, if you look along this corridor, this is all that Placer Vineyards development. So the specific plan that I think was approved in early 2000s actually, and it's been around for a while, but it's starting to move now. Along the north side of the roadway, so this would be widened from 2 to 4 lanes, similar to what you're seeing now in the city of Roseville, and it continues west. So that would be on the development community to add 2 of those additional lanes, at least where there's frontage. And then, so on the north side of the road, because that is PCCP land, that would be a bike lane ultimately. On the south side, Placer Vineyards would install also, ultimately they would have the bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And with that too, so the project Estia here would be widening Willarga from the 4 to 6 lanes through their section with bike and pedestrian facilities, so bike lanes and then separated pedestrian facilities along their frontage as well. So again, on this map, it shows, you know, what would be required from the developer portion. Watt Avenue gets to 4-lane. There's some widening along PFE, some of the widening along PFE and North Antelope as well, and some frontage improvements along Vineyards there. So this might be a little hard to follow too, but this is our capital improvement program, our CIP that got put together that I was talking about when we come up and develop all the roadways in the area that need to be funded to operate at the levels that were desired by the community. Oops. Ultimately, I think it's 198 million, something like that, of total roadway costs that are in the area. There's a column here that we take out that is, it's all the frontage improvements. Those what would be the development community is funding. And then ultimately, on this right column, is everything that goes into the CIP for the fee program. And it's $115 million. Again, that's spread over the entire future development. And as they come in, they pay their fees. We collect that and ultimately implement the projects. There's a few programs, a few traffic fee programs. This is the countywide traffic fee program. In this region too, there's Sparta, which funds a lot of regional projects outside of the pier. There's also the city-county fee programs, the city of Roseville and Placer County that work together to develop a fee program, and that funded 2 projects, this baseline road widening and the Willarga Bridge. The Willarga Bridge was constructed recently, and to give you an idea of about kind of the time frame some of these projects take, the Willarga Bridge it takes roughly about from the inception of starting to do it to the end of construction, it takes almost a decade to get those done. By the time you do all your environmental clearance, right-of-way acquisition, and construction. They're phenomenally long projects. The Willarga Bridge, I think, was roughly a $28 million project, but total cost was close to mid-30 million with all of that other stuff added in there. We're moving forward today. We're in the middle of, we've started the Watt Avenue process. We're at right-of-way acquisition today, hopefully going to be under construction with the Watt Avenue Bridge in another year to 2 years, hopefully a year, if all goes well. And again, part of that is funded through these fees and the collection of the traffic fee program. We also have a project that's being done. It's a joint project between us, Sutter County, and the city of Roseville. If you drive down Baseline Road, there's 4 stop signs currently. There's one at Locust, Pleasant Grove South, Pleasant Grove North, and Natomas. The one at Natomas would be removed. Pleasant Grove South, Pleasant Grove North, and Locust would be signalized. So we're paying for one of them out of this fee program. City of Roseville would pay for one. Sutter County would pay for one. So it would remove some of that, the delay that is currently occurring along those stop-controlled intersections. And that hopefully will be in construction next year. So when it's ultimately done, the CIP funds these various projects in the region. Again, the city-county is actually constructing the signals as well as the widening of the ultimate widening of Baseline Road, along with some frontage improvements. We have money in for ultimately it will be 6 lanes of Watt Avenue, and 6 laning of Willarga Road as well. And Willarga Road is probably the good example that I was using, where there's still some development potential and where frontage needs to be done. Estia would do their piece of it, so we'd have 6 lanes there. Ultimately, we need money to finish that. If you think about where Doyle Ranch is, that would also need to be widened. So we have money to finish out that widening. So where existing development is, we have that in our fee program. Where there's vacant land, that would be on the development community as they come forward to construct. And we will be here for any questions. And Phil Vajan, a senior engineer with our department, is here, and he works on more of the project level specifics. So any of the projects that are coming forward that anyone has questions about. And he was the one actually that worked on the Dry Creek Community Plan, so he has the history of that as well. And the other thing that can occur too, the improvements that are on these plans, whether it's our CIP or some of the one with the development community shown, there's still project-specific analysis that's done at all of these projects, and they could trigger additional improvements on top, above and beyond what we have shown on these maps. And again, happy to answer any questions after. I think Michelle is next and gonna take this for the next session and section, and then we'll be here to answer any questions.
Good evening, Michelle Kingsbury with the CEO's office, along with Sarah Poindexter with CEO's office. Sarah's going to kick us off on the future of the fire services in this area, as well as we have Chief Mackwood here as well for any specific questions.
Hi, everyone. So like she said, Sarah Poindexter with the County Executive Office. Before we dive into the future of fire service in the area, I just wanted to provide some history on Placer County Fire. So just to orient you a little bit, this map depicts the various fire service agencies within Placer County. Placer County Fire's area is the area, the area in the light yellow that starts down here at Dry Creek. It kind of comes around north through Sheridan, through northern Lincoln and northern Auburn, and then up along the I-80 corridor. In totality, the jurisdictional area is 475 square miles and protects roughly 59,000 people. Within the boundary, there are 8 full-time career fire stations and 7 volunteer stations. One thing that's important to note is although there are stations throughout the territory, Placer County Fire does serve as one unified system. The county holds a contract with CAL FIRE to serve as Placer County Fire. We've had that relationship with CAL FIRE since the 1950s, back when it was a contract for just one single firefighter serving out of the North Lincoln area, and it's evolved through that time to the system that it is today. I mentioned that it serves a population of roughly 59,000 people. Placer County Fire is a full-service fire agency that provides fire protection and fire prevention, emergency medical services, hazardous materials services, and dispatch services. The contract also provides round-the-clock chief officer coverage with training, fleet maintenance, and administrative support, along with other things. The newest contract was just renewed back in July, and with that contract renewal, there were several new positions that were added, including 3 new firefighter positions. And these additions are going to have a direct impact on Station 100, as they'll allow for increased staffing from 2 bodies per engine to 3 bodies per engine, and enhancement from basic life support service to advanced life support service. So these enhancements will really help Placer County Fire to provide a more urban level of service to keep up with all the new development. And so now, with that background, I'm going to pass it over to Michelle to talk about the future.
So as Sarah talked about kind of our big picture CAL FIRE contract, what this picture depicts is what we call our Southwest system, both existing and planned with the future growth. So the green dots represent I think the 5 existing stations that we have spread throughout the county that CAL FIRE serves out of as our Placer County Fire Department. The yellow dots are our additional planned 5 fire stations to serve the new growth that's here and coming and or pending. What's most important with the Dry Creek community is down, if I can do this correctly, down here, these 3 dots down here. So the green dot here is your Dry Creek Station 100. These 2 dots are within the Placer Vineyard specific plan for future planned fire stations off both Watt Avenue and Palladay. They're currently not constructed, but one of the important things is as we look for our planned stations, Sarah and I work quite a bit on the financial side, the money side of things, where we condition our projects, our new growth areas to pay on their property tax bills. They pay additional tax levies or assessments that go. We build funds up to support the operational sides of things. In addition to that, our new growth developments pay a fire facility fee. Those fees are collected and support the future construction and acquisition of equipment to bring these new stations forward. As Sarah mentioned right now, though, however, in this area, it's our Dry Creek Station 100. We do work with the developments, though, to condition them to pay these extra fees on the property tax bills with the new residents and or pay the mitigation fees, the fire impact fees for facilities, and we collect those fees and bank them in reserves and plan for their future growth areas. We meet quite a bit, probably on a monthly basis, working with Chris and his team on the development coming forward and trying to plan with both what our revenues are coming in, how do we support the operational side, as Sarah mentioned as an example this year with the new CAL FIRE contract, infusing more money that we've collected through these developments, and we approach this as a system-wide approach. How can we put and infuse more money in with the revenues that we collect to get additional bodies, additional equipment, and then ultimately additional stations that come forward. The stations are, a lot of times, are big ticket dollars. We're running right now about $1,100 per square foot and up to construct these stations. And so it gets quite expensive. So we look kind of as a phased approach to how do we augment our existing sites with additional staffing into the system, raise the standards from basic life support to advanced life support, and then what types of additional equipment. Ultimately, though, we'll need the new stations to come forward as the growth. It tends to go on a linear basis. So we're going from kind of east to west as they're pulling infrastructure along. We anticipate the next station coming online to be that Watt Avenue station. If you know of Placer Vineyard specific plan, those two yellow dots are in the specific plan. And the Watt Avenue station is on a property that sometimes we call them by numbers. So it's property 7 is where the Watt Avenue station is. The Palladay station is planned on property 19, which Chris mentioned has a portion of it already has a small lot tentative map approved. And the second portion of it is coming in probably about the end of the year for another map. And what that means when they come in with their maps is where we also get infrastructure phasing plans. How do we build the roads? How do we get the roads and the infrastructure stubbed out to these sites? Our developers are required to give us the sites. We require them to pull the infrastructure in, basically give us a padded, graded, stubbed out infrastructure to that. And then we come in and construct those under the Placer County umbrella and hat. There's another station, though not in Dry Creek, but our next one that we anticipate coming online, we're starting design so that, recognizing when growth comes in and we continue to build the revenue sources. We do plan, and so we are anticipating a new station, which will be our first new growth station coming online for the entire system. We're going to start design probably next year, and then construction starting probably about a year to 18 months after that. And then I anticipate probably the Watt Avenue, potentially the next one that comes online as we're generating the revenues and we're watching the growth as it's, again, going from kind of east to west and looking at the system demands on the on the Dry Creek station. For operational questions, though, I'm glad, Mr. Mackwood is here. You can probably answer them a lot better than I can. But just to give you perspective, we do work a lot on the finance side of things and looking at the development, planning for the future. How do we finance it? Do we bond for stations? If we don't have enough revenues, is that something we look for to do some bonding, to get advanced funds, to be repaid by future revenues? We do meet quite a bit and try and plan that out and looking for those service demands. But really happy with the new contract this year that we're able to infuse additional cash from those revenues that we've been collecting to get more bodies into the system and raise the standards in this area. I think with that, that I believe concludes all of our presentation. Certainly we have other staff here available as well to answer any questions that come up. Chair of the MAC, I would turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Patrick, do you have any comments at this time?
I have several. I'm an engineer and I turn in projects, a drainage engineer, so I work with development often. And my question, I guess, to you folks is that when these projects come in and they pretty much ignore the general plan or the Dry Creek plan, I don't know how they get past the front desk, because I've never turned in a project that was something like, I'm going to put in 12-inch pipe instead of 36-inch pipe because I don't think it's going to rain very much anymore. And I just, we get this information and it's pretty far down the road in terms of, they go through the process and then they have it. The second step is that they have a application that's been accepted and we move forward. And my question is, how do they get that first application accepted when there's 6 or 8 absolute violations or contradictions of the Dry Creek plan? I mean, if you look at the densities that that they're asking for right now, I don't see how it got past the clerk that takes the thing in.
Yeah. So I'll start with that, but if you want to talk a lot about sort of technical studies that are done to evaluate the systems once they're in, we can maybe have some of our engineers talk about that. But in terms of why are they able to submit their application, we allow for applications to be submitted from property owners that, sorry, I have this like weird
Ringing.
Echo or so. But they are able to submit an application to request an amendment to the community plan or an amendment to the general plan, an amendment to the specific plan. So even our specific plans, even though they've planned for the orderly development of those areas, applicants can still, property owners can still apply for an amendment to those areas and have consideration. As was talked about earlier, that is a legislative approval. That is something that goes all the way to the Board of Supervisors to consider. But it's not, I'm sorry? No, it goes through a deliberative process to get to that point for a meeting, for consideration. It goes through that entire process that I mentioned, where there's an application, there's MAC meetings, there's evaluation of the project. And as part of that evaluation of the project, that's where, as I mentioned, the project application gets submitted to our development partners, the county departments, including our engineering and surveying division that evaluates the, just keep going, including our engineering division that will then evaluate whether or not the project requires any changes to the infrastructure that's been installed.
And I would like to say that I understand that, and I believe that's the process. But I also believe that a lot of developers believe that they can put in anything they want, and it seems like it's going to get through because we have now a history of, 4,000 or 6,000 square foot lots, and they're saying, well, those guys got 6,000. What the hell's wrong with 4,000? And I guess I wish there was somewhere along the message that the Board of Supervisors, which is the deciders here, would say, slow down, boys. It's getting too much.
So one of the concerns that gets brought up almost every MAC meeting is the community feeling overwhelmed with the school. The schools in the area, is there going to be enough classrooms? This was really informative. Is there a school study? Could someone speak to that?
It'll make it easier. So Dry Creek was invited to come here to be here this evening. They're not able to be here. We'll try at the next meeting to provide information, but they are at the table with the developers whenever there's a proposal to actually address the school impacts. Every developer has to pay a fee for both the elementary schools and the high schools in their projects. So for each unit that's built, they pay a fee for the schools, and then they work with the school to figure out what's capacity. What will work? Do we have to add classrooms? Do we have to have students? Do we have to build another school? When will we build another school? So the Dry Creek Joint Elementary School District actually has a master plan that can be viewed, and they take into account all the proposed developments, and they do have a master plan for future development. And so none of these projects take place without the school's input.
Did you invite Roseville Joint Union High School District and Center School District?
We only invited Dry Creek School District because the high school districts, right now the biggest concern has been this school district and the impact to the elementary school, because we've heard that a lot of times. And the high school districts have plenty of capacity, as they've just added another school, and we've got enough capacity in the high schools. So we'll share that information. They weren't able to be here today.
Yeah. Quick question about that, if I may. Back when our community started building out and north of Baseline started building out, because school districts don't recognize county boundaries and such, developers were at that point required hard lessons learned. Our little Dry Creek Community School was at 500% capacity. I had to take my son all the way over into Roseville to go to school, so we were going to have him impacted by that because no one had put those schools in place or considered that. So as my understanding at the time, My understanding at the time when we were building, or when our community plan was being done, was that the developers would have to put, once permits were pulled, they were going to have to start building schools. So it'd be interesting to know if that is still in play, if that's still how that will function. Again, Little Dry Creek School, our 150-year-old school, that's now being sold off to God knows what. The schoolhouse, by the way, for those that don't know, is supposed to be moved into the community park for preservation as a historic site. And that is in the general plan, or community plan. So anyway, that school was impacted 500%. Make sure those schools are coming on board before these guys get to really start pulling their permits.
Thank you. Rick?
You know, I have the same question when it comes to the planning department. You know, the pre-development plan, I understand that anybody can apply for whatever they want to apply for, but I would think that it's part of your job to kind of explain to them what the community plan is and the restrictions to the community plan, and not just open it up and say, hey, free for all, do whatever you want to do. It's getting to the point that that's kind of what's happening. They're allowed to do whatever they want, so they continue to do that. But you're the first line of defense. You should be saying, here's a copy of the community plan, are you following it? It's amazing how some of the smaller developers, they are, but all the large developers, you know, they're building the 3,000-4,000 square foot lots. Doesn't seem fair is the way we're doing it. But and I understand that the Board of Supervisors has the final say so, but you should be guiding them as to what the community wants and what's going on. They can choose not to, you know, and continue on with whatever they want to do, have a plan A, plan B, or just plan A. And then whether they get shot down or not would be up to the Board of Supervisors at that point. But I think, as we've seen, especially since the rezone, that the community is not real happy with the small lots. They're not happy with the infill. They're not happy with the rural community going to by way of the city of Roseville, the city of Sacramento. It's not what we want. It's not what we moved here for. And we rely on you guys to kind of make that happen, because we're not there with the developers saying, hey, you can't do this. We don't have the power to say no. You know, we can voice our opinions, we can protest, we can do whatever you want, but you guys are the ones that make the decisions. You know, so hopefully you guys have heard our voices and take that to heart when you're meeting with these developers. The other thing I'm concerned about is water issues. You know, and I know I've seen some different slide presentations of how much water we have available. That may be something we maybe want to have somebody come in and talk to us about, because I'm concerned with groundwater being on a well. You know, what's going on? I mean, obviously I think the city of Roseville or whoever has dug some new wells, but obviously they're getting water, so that water is going to affect what our wells are going to be pulling from. So I think it's important that we know, and I know the last presentation I think I saw, that guy was saying, oh yeah, we got, you know, 40, 50 years of water, no problem. Is my microphone still working? No. Okay. But yet we go through a drought, you know, every 3 or 4 years, and all of a sudden we can't water our lawns. We, you know, got to go every other day or whatever the case is. But we have tons of water. So do we really have tons of water? And what's happening with these new developments, especially in this little area, if they all get approved, what's going to happen to all of our wells? You know, I don't personally want to have to hook up to, what is it, California American Water or whatever, because they're ridiculously high. And you know, connection fees, and that's a whole nother issue. Sewer connection fees are ridiculous just to hook up a sewer. But so that's one of my concerns. I don't know if we can have somebody here that doesn't want to. My battery's dead. Yeah. So I think maybe if we had somebody here to kind of go over it, what's going on. I don't know if Landon does that or you take care of that, Bonnie. But then I agree with native plants and trees. Why are we letting developers put anything but native plants and trees in here? Little concerned with that. I'm very concerned with animals. My son just recently, one of the 2 deer on Vineyard, he was one that hit one of them. Took out the whole front of his truck. And, you know, broad daylight, not going fast, but just going down Vineyard, the deer jumps out of the creek. They're running out of places to go. You know, we used to have deer come to our property every night between 7 and 8 o'clock and feed. You know, we rarely see deer. I know they're still coming around, but with all development, they're trying to find someplace else to go. And we're just allowing it because we're taking all of their habitat away. I really think we need to take a look at that, and one of the reasons why we shouldn't be allowing 3, 4, 5,000 square foot lots is because that's what's happening. We shouldn't have developments that have 3 or 4 or 500 homes in a small area. And I did see something on the school district, their last school board meeting, that they talked about approving some acreage over here and the new roadway going into Creekview Ranch, and I think they said they needed 9 new classrooms or something. So I know they have talked about that, but I definitely would appreciate it if they could get here to kind of go over this, because most of us don't have a clue as to what's going on with the schools. And I don't know. I know they have a plan. Everybody has a plan, but I don't think anybody expects this kind of growth either. I mean, I would have never thought that 2,000 homes were going to all of a sudden within a couple years try to be populated in this small community. And I don't think anybody would have ever planned for that 10 years ago, that all of a sudden, we're going to allow developers to come in and put 400 and 500 homes in different developments. So I think we need to take a look at that. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Could I make a couple of quick comments? For one question, I have some information on water. I have a little bit of information people might like to hear before everybody starts.
If you get a mic and you state your name, get on up here, and then we'll go with that, and then we'll open it up to the public.
Debbie Bell again, MAC member, the very first MAC we had. About the water, I was going to ask that same question about what's planned for the water. I know City of Roseville has said we'll just open up more wells. When we were doing our plan, the community of Antelope, which is immediately behind me, was being developed. We were there 5 years, they started breaking ground. While on the MAC, I had to review the EIR document for that community. Aside from the pollution aspect, which I won't get into that, we'll stick with water. In Sacramento County's EIR document, repeated over and over again, was a statement that developers had to provide surface water source. Because if they did not, there would be irreparable damage done to the aquifer. So yes, they had a surface source lined up, and guess what fell through? To my awareness, my knowledge, recently 2 new wells have gone in, but there's something like 15 deep ground wells there. About that time, that all started when the community developed out. Everybody's groundwater out here that's on wells, which are many of us, most of us, that have been here a long time. Our water table started dropping a foot a year. Okay, so big question for everyone, everywhere, that nobody seems to be addressing. City of Roseville, County of Sacramento, County of Placer. Where is the water coming from? This is California. We're dry. So how are we going to, where is that coming from? Anybody know what the plan is for our community? Do you guys? Chris? Just the water company, the good old water company, who's pulling it out of the ground?
I'm not the water lady. I'm Michelle Lewis with Engineering and Surveying. So the county isn't the water purveyor, but the new developments are being required to hook up to recycled water for all the parks and the medians, and so that is one of the sources, is a recycled water source. And then when we do the ERs, like you referred to, we have a study done. There is a water study done that the developer has to prove that there's a source. They work with the water purveyor to make sure that's, and so we receive those reports, we review them, and that's part of the environmental
And will they be
document.
held to that?
They should be. I mean, we condition those projects too, and they are required to stick to that.
Right.
I'm hearing you say that didn't happen in Antelope, but.
Sure did not.
Yeah.
Thank you. Also, what was I going to say about that? In the community plan, for those that are already on a well, we are not supposed to be forced into connecting up to sewer or water. So we should be allowed to re-drill our wells if necessary. And that's a really important thing. And then the other thing that I hadn't seen addressed at all, and my bad, it's not on the agenda or part of this thing, but you were talking about widening Watt Avenue 6 lanes, is that correct? And for those that don't know, Willerga was always slated in the community plan for 6 lanes. Watt Avenue, so does anyone know what the plan is for the Union Cemetery? That's our very, very old community
I'm just
plan.
going to have to hold you off right there, and then we'll get back to it.
Okay.
And we'll put you on the 3-minute. Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
So
I
that's-
apologize, but
yeah,
we
Union
gotta move
Cemetery,
for-
I'd like
yeah.
to know.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize for cutting you off. I am grateful for the information. I'm going to work backwards, actually. So I'm going to go to the Placer County Deputy CEO and in regard to the Placer County Fire Department, who made the decision to not put the fire department at North Antelope and PFE. That was on the community plan, and that was skirted by in regard to the Creek View project that went in. So if you don't have an answer, that's okay, because we're limited on our time, and that's the buffet, that's the buffer that you have at this time. Also, with the county staff and their support of this existing community, that's what this is, it's an existing community, and not just picking on the fire department or the roadway or the planning commission or the engineers that are responsible for this. But when we file a complaint, and the complaint goes to the hearing officer, and the hearing officer comes back with saying, this is what you need to do, and then the county comes back and says, oh, don't worry about it, to the landowner, you can just go ahead and do this little bit, and we'll allow that to happen. There is no way for me, as a property owner, there is no way, there is no lawyer that will take the case against the county for the decision that they made. And they show preference to individuals when they shouldn't. And that's the problem with the developments that are coming in. There is no voice here. You make it seem like on this little graph here, and I'm kind of getting off a little bit, like the MAC has anything to say. We don't have anything to say. Sometimes the Planning Commission listens to us. When it goes to the Board of Supervisors in regard to the project on the corner of PFE, on Willerga and Baseline in Maine, whatever you want to call it there, the community was totally against that. And that was forced down our throat. And it sits there today and it shows in green. But yet you show here Creek View in orange, as if it's moving forward. As if that is moving forward. They haven't done anything, and as a matter of fact, they had to stop putting in the gas lines, if I'm correct or not, and everything's been put on hold. So this is maybe misinformation as far as you're concerned at the county staff level, but this is very frustrating for us. We go through and we follow the guidelines given to us, and you turn around and you change everything. So here are all these people that are sitting out here, and they're getting tired of coming here and sitting here and saying, this is what I feel. This is what we've done. And this is what you've done to us. And that's the difficulty. When you knew many years ago, 3 years ago actually, that the rezoning was going to come into effect, and you were waiting for the what was the case with the place down south? I'm sorry? Yeah, waiting for that to have effect and to see what to do, which is the excuse that was given to this community, that we were waiting for that to happen so that we wouldn't. Why didn't we file a case against that? Why didn't you protect us? County staff has not protected us. When I look at this plan for the roadways, this was done back in 2004. This was done back in 2004. 2011 is when you guys adopted it. And then you turn it around and say to me that, okay, why isn't PFE closed? That's my question to you, because that was part of the plan.
That was the plan prior to starting that study in 2006. That's what initiated that plan. You're right. The old plan, I think it was from 1990, if I recall, had when a threshold of volume hit on PFE road, it would be closed or restudied, there were some provisions in there for that, if I recall, just west of Cook Riolo, right?
Okay,
it'd be
so good
cul-de-sac-
enough, because
let me-
we
let me
really don't
finish-
have
let me-
time for
let
the
me
whole
finish.
thing, because the scenario, that's the thing that I always get from my supervisor, we have to go. We have to move forward on this. We don't have the time for this entire explanation. Is why was it opened back up? It wasn't brought to this board.
11 MAC meetings, this community plan, the
That
updates
was
of the
not brought,
circulation
no,
element.
the opening
it
of
was.
PFE was not brought here because I've served on this board since Rocky Rockholm was a supervisor.
I disagree.
Were you there?
Phil Bajan was.
Phil, did you bring this to the board, to the MAC? Because I don't recall you coming to the MAC and saying you were going to open PFE Road. It was closed.
So the
There was a, yes, it was. PFE at Walerga? Yeah, it was. No,
So-
PFE,
So yeah, Walt.
sorry, Phil.
No problem. So Walt, between '06 and 2011, we came to the MAC several times, I think 11 times from what Rich said. And we talked about, the process of keeping PFE Road open. We hired a consultant, and Farron Piers, our traffic consultant, to look at everything and to do a study for us. And ultimately what the community wanted to happen is they wanted to keep Cook Riolo Road at 2 lanes, Vineyard at 2 lanes, and PFE between Walerga and Antelope at 2 lanes, but keep PFE open. So yes, I was here for the whole time, and that was a pretty long process, about 5 years. So
I apologize because my understanding was that it was going to be closed.
Well,
based on the development that was happening, and yeah, you're right about that location. So I apologize, but the thing is it's so frustrating to sit on this side of it, and in this graph, it looks like the MAC is reviewing this, and what we give the developer, which is sitting right back there, the information, they come back and say, okay, we're going to move, we're going to make the lots a little bigger, we're going to move them off, and we're going to move it forward. That isn't what this community wants. This is an existing community. This isn't some bunch of podunk people they came in here and they bought here because this is where they wanted to live. And it is being destroyed. The Creekview Ranch is a perfect example of that. I voted against that ranch. I voted against changing the fire department. I have voted against changing the community plan all the time. But every time I get any information back is that this isn't, whether it's legal or not. Is this legal? Yes, it's legal. But shouldn't you be supporting the people that are paying your taxes? Shouldn't the people that are paying this community to keep it viable, shouldn't that be supported? So, and my next question is actually for the, what is the requirement by law by how many homes that the fire department is servicing? Should just be a number. So this is another thing that kind of bothers me too, is because when they changed this at Creekview, when they moved the new fire department and they said that this is adequate, 100, I was told by Chris, who was the engineer that came and presented Creekview to us for informational, was that this was closed, this was because the fire department said it wasn't necessary. Absolutely. And then the next month, when the fire department came in, I understand you all have jobs. So do I. And it's my community. But then the next time when CAL FIRE came to give their report, I asked them, who makes the decision to move the fire department not to follow the Creekview plan, or to follow the Dry Creek plan? And the person, your representative, said, well, we rely on the professionals. We rely on the county to make that decision. So it was kind of a finger-pointing thing. So I have an issue with that. We should be able to resolve these things, and we should be able to file a complaint, and we should be able to have that followed through, because we don't have the resources to stop it.
Yeah, Walt, I can't speak to the history. Maybe Michelle can, to the station you're referring to, quite honestly. What I can tell you is Station 100 right now, it runs right around, if you take it back to 2021, it runs about 550 calls annually. 22 went up probably 100 calls. 23, we were sitting at another 100. For 2024, we're going to be right around 860 or so calls projected annually for that station. In all reality, that station is not crazy busy. Okay, it's a decent station. It runs a fairly decent amount of calls. Where we're sitting right now for 100, with all the growth that's going on, I feel comfortable where we're sitting right now in regards to the response to that station. We have, I heard some of the questions earlier, I think, from maybe other MAC meetings that had come up to me before I got here, and what it looks like when that station's gone, who's going to protect us. Understand this county has been bolstered. We have Roseville that sits next to us, Sac Metro. You guys all understand all that. But, the beauty of it is we have drop boundaries, or we have auto or mutual aid agreements in place. So when that station's gone on a call, and you get another call in between that time, which is pretty rare, those are the ability to pull closest resource equipment to that call is simple. We do it every day. If you get...
Thank you. So my question is actually, by law, what are the requirements?
To build a station?
For the support, how many rooftops by law?
Yeah, it varies. There's no law to it. It varies. There's trigger points that are established through the county. We're in right about 1,500 permits to be pulled before stations start to get, sticks built for that station. That's the average. So right in that ball game. Bickford Ranch is a little bit, we have that station here is being built. That development's a little bit different. We take into other considerations through, working with the county. That one sits up high. It's got about 15 different drainages that goes up into that community. So we lowered those triggers a little bit, lessened them up, just because that particular development's going to be challenging in there, quite honestly. There's a lot of stuff going in that one. So typically, Walt, about 1,500 permits pulled before we start to go to construction on the station.
Thank you.
Yep.
So then also, within the community plan, that plan backbone for the Vineyards plan has already been submitted, correct?
Are you
For the
referencing
transportation.
Yeah, it's part of the analysis when they move forward, right? They do their specific plan analysis, do their full traffic analysis, and that identifies what roadways are needed and the widening needed. And so what's going to be a 2, 4, and 6
we were
lane.
given when they were saying this is going to be an F, so we need to make it this big, and everything was presented to us previously in regard to that. So I think a lot of the information that we've received was already given to us back in 2008. And then we had everything went into a decline. And so everything dropped dead. There have been many assumptions that have been given to us that we should know about this. The concern is that we're not willing to sacrifice our children, because this was the decision that the county made to allow these developments to go in. In 2010, I went to a MAC meeting and I looked out and there was a whole herd of deer sitting on a mound when I was coming in here. They aren't there anymore. We know what's going to happen with the vineyards going in. We know that's going to happen. This is an existing community that's being decimated by the planning department allowing these developments to even be submitted. And I realized that by law, because none of our plans hold any water. The community plan, Placer County's building plan, none of them hold any water, because somebody's willing to turn around and say, well, can I do this? Do we have any at this time? Do we have any legislative projects working right now?
When you say legislative projects, do you mean, do you projects that are coming through the process that
Yes.
require, yes, we do. We have a number of projects.
Right. So within those
not all-
legislative
not all,
projects, are
but-
those the ones that are
Yeah, those-
required to have certain? Are they required to have the SR 3030?
No, they're not. If it requires a legislative action, it is not subject to SB 330. But so the map that you have up here, the ones that are in process currently are yellow. Those ones, most of those projects require a legislative action, with the exception of the Morgan Crossing project that I mentioned earlier, that is in for just a tentative subdivision map.
So within those parameters,
I'm sorry, a tentative subdivision map would be considered a quasi-judicial action. It's not a legislative action. And so it's heard by, per our code, it's heard by the Planning Commission rather than the Board of Supervisors.
so my concern is that what are you going to do to protect us? I mean, I'm getting really frothed out of all of this. I did everything that I was supposed to do. It went, with the county, and I went through hearings, and I did everything I'm supposed to do, and yet the county engineering department made a decision that influenced my life for the rest of my life, without following through on what the judgment was from the hearing officer. So what are you doing to protect us?
And so what I would say in response, because there were a couple of comments made, I would say that a couple of comments made about planning staff and planning's evaluation of projects and information that we provide to property owners. And we certainly do provide information to potential applicants about consistency with community plans, consistency with all of the relevant policy documents that have been approved. And we also do encourage applicants to come out to your municipal advisory council and prior to submitting an application, and to hear from the community about their proposed project, any potential modifications or deviations that they might be seeking if the project doesn't totally conform to the community plan, to get that input directly from the community. Our job as professional planners is to perform that evaluation, to provide that information, to ensure that everything is done transparently and with integrity, and bring forward a project after it's been evaluated, and we prepare that analysis, and that analysis is provided to the decision makers to evaluate all of the information on a project and make an informed decision based on that project. And that includes the evaluation of the project against the community plan or any other policy documents that have been approved by the board.
Yeah, go ahead. In just a minute.
I've got one more.
In just a minute. Thank you.
I have one more question on the traffic and transportation. Just listening, the plans and the community wanted 2-lane road on Cucuriolo and Vineyard. Well, we got that, but we have 5 times as many cars that are going to be there because the density is 5 times larger than it was before. And to me, we get our wish of a 2-lane road, but there's going to be traffic problems 5 times bigger than was anticipated 10 years ago, and I don't know how to put all that together and say it's okay to move forward.
Right. There's certainly underlying zoning, and when we do those traffic models, right, we don't just assume what's there today. We obviously assume the zoning. And you're right, some stuff has changed. What I went back and looked at, and I just looked at 2 specific projects. One was Creekview Ranch, and then the ranch itself, right? So for Creekview Ranch, what was allowed there was about double the traffic generation of what they ended up putting in. And similarly with the ranch. But when you look at those 2 together, the delta is actually less traffic being generated than what we assumed in our modeling efforts by about 2,500 cars a day. to give you an idea. So to answer that, you're right. Some are going to be higher, some are going to be lower than what were in those models. But in general, some go higher again, some go a little bit lower, some come in at that exact number. But it turns out that the numbers on the roadways themselves are fairly close to what was predicted with the model. In addition to that, like I was saying earlier, when projects come in, project specific, they have to do an individual traffic analysis, and that would show up, right? If they do that, they'll see what those effects are on that cumulative setting on those roadway networks.
Thank you. So we're going to open it up to the public. At this point, we're probably going to end up getting kicked out, so please do the best you can with getting your question out, and we'll move forward from there. Go ahead, please.
I'll be really quick. Whoops, can you hear me?
Just say your name and move.
Hello? Hello? So my name's John Fensky. I live in Dry Creek over there. Something, I had a whole different idea I wanted to talk about, but I think this is important. It's regarding water. I spent 30 years as a groundwater hydrologist. I'm a licensed civil engineer. I taught a graduate class in groundwater engineering and modeling at UC Davis. I don't believe, and I haven't studied this area, but I do know groundwater. I think the discharge exceeds the recharge in this area. The recharge comes to the mountain fronts into the groundwater. And I think I have not seen any long-term studies of the impact of groundwater, of discharge from groundwater on the overall hydrology of the area, including the flow of Dry Creek and everything. You could do long-term models using different models. I can name the models, but you could do that, and I have not seen that. And that's something that I think should be very important to everybody, because I have a well too, and that's something that's very important. So that is one thing that might be used to stop some of this development. It's very important. That's all I have to say.
So we'll get a long-term study on that, Bonnie?
If you, I'll do it.
Okay, I'm going to go back to our community plan. Laura Trout, sorry. 70 years, Central Avenue, 10 acres. When the first plan was developed, I worked with, I think Janice Palmer was working with you. Yeah, I was still working in the California legislature on the local government. Well, my boss was on the local government committee vice chair. I helped do a lot of the input to that. It's one of the reasons that we had one home per acre minimum, or maximum, sorry. And behind my fence on Central, it's one home for 2 acres. That's a damn sight from 1,500 homes. There is no model. There's no research, and there's no studies that you're going to be able to show me that says that this community that has a plan for one home per acre or 2 acres that's going to be able to hold a capacity for 1,500 homes. It's not there. The roads aren't there. The infrastructure's not there. The schools aren't here. The water's not here. The fire and life safety isn't here. It's not here. It's not going to be here. There is nothing in your plans right now that are going to reach it. There is nothing at the county that's going to meet it. You've got to start holding these developers accountable at the beginning when it's yellow or whatever color you want to give them. I don't quite understand the color flow chart for I like the graphic you did with the going up and down stuff. I'd like to know which parts of this leverage here is yellow versus orange versus green versus blue and every other color. This doesn't tell us. When they get into this SB 330 stuff, it doesn't help us. It helps the developers. They only have to have 3 to 5 public hearings that they have to put up with us in, that they have to answer to us in. That's why we depend on the MAC, and the MAC depends on the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission depends on the Board of Supervisors. But at the bottom of every one of these meetings are the 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 of you that are paid to do that job. This is what we need. The community plan that we made was sufficient, is sufficient, and would be sufficient if it was followed, and if we weren't continually disrespected, overlooked, and varianced out of existence.
Rick Reedman, Dry Creek. The point that Patrick made, if we have an application that comes in, we should be able to have an hourly employee sit there, compare it to the community plan and say, sorry, and kick it back before the county and everybody else spends millions of dollars and then trying to figure out they've got to do it because they've already spent all this money. It shouldn't happen. As far as the water goes, if you read that community plan that's on your desk, it said that when that was written, that the water table was at a deficit then. That was before the city of Roseville dumped 4 big wells down the ground and Antelope dumped however many. And don't even get me started about the thoughts of what's happening when they're recharging our wells with this surface water that's going straight down into the groundwater without having the benefit of filtering through the ground. As far as the traffic goes, once again, the community plan, it says that, yeah, we're going to keep Vineyard Road a 2-lane road, but it also says there's going to be trails for pedestrians, for cyclists, and for equestrians, which, where are those? You know, we can't just take pieces of the community plan and say, well, this is what you said. Yes. Either honor it all or don't. But don't sit there and don't try and buffalo us into believing that it's being followed, because it's not.
So Mike, and I apologize if you think we were trying to buffalo you on that. That's not it. I was showing simply the roadway network, and that is true. But as part of that, the community plan, when it gets developed, there are those separated paths and the other facilities that you're talking about, whether it's bike lane, separated path, all that stuff, that gets developed with it too. I just came strictly on the roadway network itself, so that's what I was focused on tonight. But the rest of that gets implemented as the projects move forward as well.
I'll add on the groundwater. We certainly are, we have the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, and I believe we're in the North American Subbasin, but it might be worthwhile to have our groundwater folks come to a potential future MAC as well to provide an update on that side too.
Hi, Tammy Reedman. Okay, I'm going to tell you a personal story about fire. You all have numbers, and I understand that's your job. That's your job. But in 2005, my husband was in a horrific horse accident. He laid in my pasture for 45 minutes. I'm on Eva Lane, less than a mile from Station 100. 45 minutes. This is what happens. They were somewhere else. I know there's mutual aid, and I know you say that they're not busy, and I understand all the numbers, but you're adding all these homes, and some of them are 55 and over communities, so we all know what happens there because I'm there. A lady down the street, a few years later, had a heart attack. They did CPR on her for 30 minutes. We don't have an EMT because you can't hire one. And she died, brain dead, okay? So don't tell me that you have it covered. Your numbers say we're okay. We can add all these millions of homes and we're all gonna be safe, because you are not gonna be safe anymore in your homes. You're adding thousands of people, and those poor 2 firemen can't handle it. The safety of us, you're all gonna end up like this, in a wheelchair, okay? And don't tell me you had mutual aid and you could have made it. I know you could have, but you didn't. So please, think about that before you allow these new homes to go in, before thinking ahead and putting the infrastructure for the safety of us. You've got thousands of homes going over there, down there. Why are you concentrating on the last 3 pieces of property? The last 3 in our little itty bitty area. Don't approve it, Bonnie. Please don't approve it. Don't take that away from us. Make them build to our community plan, and don't allow them to put all those homes and all those people on busy Vineyard. You live off of Vineyard. I know you know Vineyard. Please don't let them do that to us. Please.
Hi, my name is Sue Creighton. I live in Dry Creek. I have a question for Chris. This wonderful map you gave us with the colors, I love it. The yellow means it's under review. Does that mean it has the ability to be stopped?
Yeah, anything that's in yellow is in process of being evaluated, will be subject to a hearing, and that can be either a up or down on it. So
it
yes.
can, okay, it can be stopped. Okay, so you present this with our community plan, our Dry Creek community plan, and then who ultimately makes the decision that it goes through? That's what I'd like to know.
It depends on the project, as I mentioned
Well,
earlier.
I'm thinking
all
of the ranch right
yeah,
now,
The
'cause
ranch,
that's a big one.
the ranch will be heard. Ultimately, the decision will be by the Board of Supervisors.
So the Board of the Supervisors should have a copy of our Dry Creek community plan, is that correct?
I have copies, I can't tell you.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to figure out who makes the ultimate decision, because it's important to have all the pieces to the puzzle, because you can't make an informed decision if you don't have all the facts. So that's what I'm concerned about, and or if they're going to be using that as a guideline for these decisions to go through. Also wanted to know about the environmental impact, and if we as a community need to hire an environmental attorney to support our community plan, but to think about all these displaced animals, what we're doing to our whole community as a whole. Is that something that we need to think about? It's just something that I feel pretty strongly about.
Candy Cost Herbert, Dry Creek Estates Property Owners Association. I am the official president. That's the small subdivision north of Sabre City. And it has Billy Mitchell Boulevard there. I don't know how many homes are in Sabre City, 150 or so, and we're going to add 20 or 40 more because I think it's 20 plus 20 ADUs. Okay, so that's another 40. And on your transportation plan, oh, quickly about the community signs, I have to remember this. They put up a sign and they say, oh, we're going to do this to this property, except for they put the sign in a place where you can't possibly pull off the road to actually see if there's anything there. There's never any papers in there. And I about got myself killed one time trying to find out about one of the properties. So I don't know if you can tell them to place a sign where you actually can pull over and read it or not, but I know at least 5 or 6 signs that are ridiculous you can't get near to even see, like the one at the corner of North Antelope and PFE. It's on the right. You can't, unless you are coming north on North Antelope Road, you can't even see what it says, so anyway, that's just my pet peeve.
That. Yeah, we'll take a look at that. Our requirement is to put it in a location that's accessible off of a public right of way.
Yeah, I haven't found one accessible yet. But my concern,
Excuse
though.
me. Was that in regard to the development coming? Those
Yeah.
signs are required?
Yeah.
So at the last meeting, we were told that it is the job of the petitioner to place them.
That's correct. But our code.
Okay, so
our
that was
code
the reasoning
prescribe-
behind the reason why there was one that was placed out quite a ways away. So just to let you know that they can ask them to do that, but the petitioner is actually the one that's going to place it where they want to.
But
Our code has requirements about where they are to be placed, but yes, it is the applicant that places them.
Okay, so we have, say there's 150 plus 40 more units in Sabre City. Billy Mitchell there, I walk the road every morning, literally every morning with 2 of my neighbors. And we're at the intersection of Billy Mitchell and PFE, maybe for 10 minutes of an hour and a half. And at least 1, usually 3 or 4 vehicles run the stop sign. Now, when we get the CHP, we complain about it, and they say, well, we stop there and we catch residents. Well, I don't care. But I noticed that you, I haven't been here 3 minutes. I've noticed you have traffic calming. You have roundabouts in various places. You don't have one at Billy Mitchell or Sword Dancer. And I'll invite you on my walk and we can hang out there. I'll got your coffee or whatever,
Yeah.
and you can see how many people run those stop signs. And now it's all construction trucks, and some of them stop, some of them kind of slow down and go. So what I would like to have is some maybe 20-mile-per-hour speed tables before those stop signs, because at least they'll be flying through the air rather than, straight running. Someone is going to get killed there. We've already had cars on their sides, early morning one time. That was really special. So why isn't some traffic calming happening there?
There actually is some stuff starting to occur. We're looking at ways to, the other thing we've heard about is the people doing donuts out there, right? There are a lot of those,
yes.
and absolutely. So we're looking at measures and temporary measures, at least in the short term, to try and fix, in particular, that problem and some running. Could we put, and one of the things we're looking at for the ones that do those donuts, you can actually put down, they're called bot dots, and they're non-reflective markers, because it makes them break traction. They're not able to do it anymore, and that helps. That's one way. The other thing we're looking at potentially doing is you put down, use like parking bumpers, if that makes sense, to make a temporary circle in the middle of an intersection so people can't just, they can still roll through it, but they wouldn't speed through it. But the other part of that is part of the community plan. There are speed reduction measures, and one is particularly at PFE, and Billy Mitchell is named there, and there's money in our fee program for that. So Phil may have some more detail about that, but I do know we're looking at different measures, and we've heard a lot about the speeding on PFE Road. So we're looking into the ways to help with that, but I'll let Phil talk if he has some more.
Yeah, just to add to what Rich said, so right now specifically, when it comes to the donuts and stuff like that, we're looking at Mason Trails intersection right now and doing a trial out there with some bots dots.
Which is the one at Sword Dancer, or?
It's west of Walerga. It's part of the Rio Vineyard specific plan. So we're going to try like a trial basis out there and see if we can, stop or reduce the behavior out there. And then the other thing, like Rich said, with the speed humps, what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to update the Dry Creek CIP, or the Capital Improvement Program, to update the costs that we can take in by developers to build, future, traffic calming devices out there, because the last time it was updated was in 2011, right around the same time that the transportation element was done. And over 13 years, we have inflationary, you have inflation that occurs, and so the dollar back then just doesn't. Yeah, I need more than 3 minutes. Sorry about that, but. So hopefully that answers some of your questions.
Yeah, and what's the big thing about speed humps versus speed tables? Because I have horses, and I'm pulling my trailer, 2 or 3 times a week down PFE Road or Cook Riolo, and those speed humps are just about a killer to go take my horses over. Versus.
Well, they slow you down, right?
To about a mile and a half. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but we're going to have to move forward with someone else, just because we're going to get kicked out of here if everybody doesn't have a. No, you can get behind the line and let somebody else come in, and then I won't get in trouble.
Hi, my name is Craig Watts. I'm a member of Dry Creek. I've lived here for about 3 years. The newest member of Dry Creek is back here, my son. He's 2 months old. And I grew up I like this illustration. I grew up in the city of Roseville, and I always wanted to live out in the rural area where I had friends and family, but it was never really in the cards for our family. And finally the opportunity arose, and a little bit of luck. A couple years ago, I was able to move out here and buy a property that I wanted to raise my family in this rural community, and to have him have, this lifestyle. And if you look at this map, which is mostly everything on here has been in the last maybe 10 years in the works. If you go back even 20 years maximum for some of them, imagine doubling that. So 10 years from now, when my kid's he's not even in high school yet, this is gonna be the city of Roseville. We're just gonna be an extension of Roseville. It's literally, if you double this in 10 years, it's gonna be the exact same as Roseville. How can we continue this? How can you guys allow this to continue? I know, I'm a general contractor, and I have people who want to build things on their property, and they want to build an ADU. Planning department has no problem saying no. They say no all the time to this individual people when we come out there, we want to do something. No, no, no. The developers come in, they get entitlements, they throw our community plan away, and this rural community is not going to be like what it once was. This is California. There's like land is going away and it's not coming back. Like this is a small little golden nugget, and you guys are just destroying it one property at a time with no regard for us. And it's sad. It's very sad to see. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you all coming out here tonight. Chris, it's good to see you again. I understand that you operate at the pleasure of the board, and I understand that the board operates at the pleasure of the people. And I guess what a lot of the frustration probably from people is that when you're talking about these new projects, a lot of the times it seems like when these guys come out, these developers with your planning people, it's like they're best friends, and they've been like hanging out a million times before this, and it's more like a sales pitch by the time it gets to us. Like the paint is dry on everything, like it's a done deal, and like they're best friends. And so it just sounds like something that they're pitching to us and basically just here to check a box and move on. It doesn't seem like Walt was saying, you know, with the graph, like the MAC really has much authority at all with its recommendation, that it doesn't really carry any weight whatsoever. So it just feels a little misleading to say that that's part of some actual part of this process. I think that yeah, so that's I was going to talk a little bit about the traffic. You know, I think people are frustrated with that, and like Mr. Reedman was talking about, I think it's fair to say that between 2006 and 2011, when the community was, you know, talking about keeping traffic off these streets, they were trying to funnel it around to North Antelope Road, or to some of these other bigger ones off these streets. We wanted to keep our streets at 2 lanes. And I think it's fair to say that they thought at that time too that the community plan would be followed, that we would have these 1 to 2.3 acre lots, you know, for small family farms. That was the point of Dry Creek, was to have that opportunity provided for residents in this area to come out here. So when they were saying, yeah, keep these lanes here, you can't put it back on us later that they said that. Well, but they probably thought that like, you know, was going to be built out in a different way at a lower density, obviously. Also, okay, and then also when you talk about the project-specific analysis, when they're doing these analysis for these things, even like the most recent one was the DEIR that came out for the ranch. You know, some of these analyses aren't really as accurate as you might think they are. Like, for instance, just when you're looking at the signal at Cookreela Creekview at peak time, the LOS there, I don't know what they gave it, like a B or a C or something. It is the worst signal. I mean, anybody here will tell you it is the craziest thing. So for it to get that kind of rating at peak hours is kind of ridiculous. Same as the one down the end of Cookreela towards Baseline, and the same as the one on like Vineyard. It's been a while since I read the DIR, but Vineyard at Foothills, I think. Really bad ratings. I just don't see. They say that, but and then they say in their analysis that there's no significant, what do they call it? Impacts, right? And so mitigations like what? Change of a light timer. That's what they're always like, oh, just change this light timer. Well, we've seen a steady increase of traffic. No one expects it to stay the same over years and years, but there has been poop. There has been a steady increase, and if with these new developments that have come in here, and you know, no one expects it to stay flat, the LOS to stay the exact same, but at the same time, you can't just say we're going to change a light timer and there's going to be no significant impacts when you're talking about thousands of homes when we've already seen a dramatic uptick, especially because what was I just going to say before that timer went off? No one expects it to stay the same. Darn, that timer.
Tell that guy back there. Tell that guy back there.
I'm never gonna remember. It's only when I'm not gonna think about it that it's gonna come back to me. But
I'm sorry.
Let me just I'll remember it maybe. Sorry, everybody.
Wait, which mic is working?
Just this one?
Whichever
Both
one.
of them are working for again, I promise to be actually really short. Laura Bullard, and actually aging myself 62 years in the community. And the deal is, I just want to hit a couple of your guys' numbers. You said that you needed to have a new station at 1,500. I did the quick math, just on the stuff this side of Walega, and it's called Walega, guys. Okay, it's actually somebody's name. I always tell a non-local from that. The deal is from Walega over, or whatever, it's 1,913 with just the yellow people. Okay, the yellow sections proposed. That would mean that you are behind on our needing a new, a new fire station. Okay, so I'm just saying that one over there should have come in. Second thing is, Chris, I know you haven't been with us that long or whatever, so you don't know about a lot of these plans and everything. And my apologies to you for that. But you said you don't even have that sucker memorized. I'm wondering how it is you even give advice or whatever to these people when they submit their plans, because I'm going to probably guarantee you that nobody else up there has that sucker memorized either, okay? And so one of the things is, come talk to us. We'll give you the specifics or whatever if you'd like to talk to us or whatever, and we'll give them some specifics, and then we would like actually followed. All right? Thanks.
Dean Shanklin, again. Chris, is your title Placer County Planning Manager? Did I say it right? Planning Director. I think we should put in an initiative to change it to Placer County Planning, Protection, and Preservation Manager. Because what's happening is you're planning. That's your job. But you're not preserving, you're not protecting our interests. You serve at the behoost of the supervisors. We have one supervisor that lives in our area, and we have 5 county supervisors that all make a decision on what happens in our little area. I also think that we should change it to where we decide what happens in our area with our county supervisor, not somebody that's way up in Tahoe casting a vote on what's happening down here. I think our whole way of doing this is all backward. I get it for RENA, for different things like that, for rezoning and stuff. It has to be a county-wide decision. But on stuff that affects our community, should be by our supervisor listening to what we want in our community plan and not getting just destroyed by other county supervisors in other areas. It's just ridiculous. The little pumpkin traffic mitigation thing that was at Cook-Riolo and Baseline. You guys succumbed to what we wanted and put in this traffic mitigation so that Cook-Riolo would stay small, and then right at when a few people decided, hey, you know what, we want that taken out, it's inconvenient. Then all of a sudden, oh, there was this great plan to quickly turn around and tear that up, put in traffic signals, and widen Baseline to 6 lanes all of a sudden. I think it was planned from the beginning that you guys were going to eventually just wear us down and take that thing out. It's ridiculous. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Hi, Lisa Mendenhall again. And I guess my question both to you, Chris, and to you, Bonnie, I mean, taxpayer dollars, we vote for you to represent us. So do you have an example where a application was submitted and you actually said no because it didn't meet the community plan?
Morgan Crossing was recently one
Okay.
that I think many people in this room are aware of.
Okay, I wasn't aware, so thank you for that. So I guess my question then is, with these other ones that are in yellow, Estia being closest to where I live, the ranch obviously impacting all of us on Vineyard, right? And the traffic, the people that blow through all the stop signs, whether it's Cook-Riolo, Crowder, they're all trying to bypass Baseline and get out to wherever or come in this way. That's only going to increase it. The safety of everybody is at stake here. So I guess, what do we need to do as residents here in Dry Creek to help empower you guys to say no to Estia and to the ranch? Thank you.
Sorry, a response to that question. Again, I think planning's role in the process is to put together an evaluation of the process or evaluation of the project, lay out all of the information in a clear and reasonable way for the decision makers to make a decision on the project.
I know in the past there was, when the Vineyards project came before the Board of Supervisors, there were two things that needed to go, that they follow up on. One of them was the environmental impact report, and the other one was the closure of Locust Road. And that was it. And then the economy tanked and everything happened, was what happened. So the community itself is feeling empty by the opportunities that are being taken of the existing properties here. There is only one way for that to be resolved, and that's for there to be a relationship with the county staff and the community and the petitioner or the developer that's coming in. And that is what happened with the Vineyards. They actually pulled the people, and we're all, and I've said this before, they reference the west side of District 1 as a special planning area. This is all a special planning area now. You live in the spa, which is what was recognized back in 2004, was the special planning area. So the only way for you to impact this is to get together with the petitioner or the developer and county staff and encourage them to listen to your voices. Any other comments from the county staff?
Just real quick, I want to close out tonight with a couple of quick things. First of all, I apologize. I don't know the history or background of your accident, sir, but I'd love to hear it offline, talk offline about that. 45 minutes unacceptable. Won't happen again, I can tell you that much. Understand that. You know, the one thing I will say about our Board of Supervisors in regards to public service, law enforcement, fire, they are pro on both. And we have, when we take our issues to the County Board of Supes, we have no issues of getting things passed. Talk about 3.0 staffing, talk about our EMTs. Station 100 will be upgraded to a paramedic. Station 100 will be upgraded to 3.0 staffing. It's a big deal. Ma'am, I work for the largest fire department in California. We're going to find them. So every single fire department's having issues with paramedics. So we got them. We'll get them. So the 3.0 staffing ALS mechanism for 100 is a big deal for your community. I just want you to know that. So anyway, thank you, Bonnie, for your support in the fire side. And I'll leave it with that for a positive note for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. So our correspondence received by the MAC was on September 12th, the Placer County CEQA active list, project list, which is stated here. The adjournment on this meeting at this time, and our next West Placer MAC meeting will be October 15th in this room. I would encourage you to encourage other residents that live in this area to come to these meetings and to sit through them and to stay here, because it builds and it dies. It builds and it dies. And if you build it, I mean, they're going to build it. The county's going to build it out.
Before you adjourn, can I give a quick update just for the upcoming meetings? Thank you. I guess that works.
Actually, too, there was someone that asked for the information that was provided in a hard copy. Bonnie did provide that with the MAC meeting. And then also, thank you for reminding me that you can go to placer.ca.gov/WPMAC for any information on this meeting.
Right, so you can get the presentation online. If you need to find it, contact my office, Landon, and we'll make sure you get it if you can't find it. So feel free to reach out. So the next meeting is October 16th, but on October 15th, there's going to be a town hall presentation on zoning text amendments that we're doing countywide. It's a virtual and in-person meeting town hall on the evening of October 15th. So we will send that information out, but I wanted to make sure you all are aware that those zoning text amendments are going to be discussed, so you can give any input on those zoning text amendments. And then another item, 2 introductions. Well, one, Katie Kammer has left our office to go on to another opportunity. So if you're looking for Katie, you'll have to reach out to Landon instead, because she's no longer with us, which is unfortunate. And then I'd like to also introduce Paul Hellman. Paul is our new CEDRA director. He's been sitting here listening to this robust conversation. So I just wanted to make sure you meet him. He's over the entire planning department, basically. Community Development Resource Agency, basically planning and development agency. He's the director. All right, and then that's it for me. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Oh, and one last thing, which I think is really important. So out in Dry Creek, we heard from a lot of folks that there was trash in Dry Creek, and not only trash, but a lot of debris. So with a little bit of effort with our Parks Department, our Public Works Department, there is currently a cleanup going on out in the Dry Creek area. We've got crews out a couple days a week now through mid-October. So not all of it will be cleaned up, but a lot of work will be done to get a lot of the debris and some of the trash out of the creek. So I appreciate those who've reached out to us to let us know how bad it got, especially with all the water we had this last year.